mantra, and the mantra is put.
Put.
And I want to do it in each direction, pushing away, starting in the south, go counterclockwise, and vanishing. And then once in the middle.
Put. 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 Put.
There you go. Okay. Now this is the mudra you make. It's called the wand mudra. So starting in the center, I think start facing south, starting in the south, do the clockwise circles, and the mantra is Om Mani Padme Namo, Om Mani Padme Namo. And you have to vibrate it. Make a circle with this as if it's a wand, and you're making a circle and going clockwise. Clockwise. Om Yo Guru Namaha. Om Yo Guru Namaha.
Om Yo Guru Namaha.
Keep saying the mantra. Om Yo Guru Namaha. And light the candle while you say it. Yo Guru. Cup of water and dip your hand in and say, stop saying Om, and start saying Om Yo Diva Namaha. And sprinkle some water in your breath.
Om Yo Diva Namaha. Om Yo Diva Namaha.
Say the mantra.
Om Yo Diva
Stop
Namaha.
saying that mantra. And start saying Om Yo Diva Namaha. And light the incense.
Om Yo Diva Namaha. 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 Om Yo Diva Namaha.
Okay, we're going to ask for some help with this mantra. Just join in whenever you get a handle on it. Can you use your mala?
Double checking. Just make sure. Oh, where's Facebook? Oh yeah, we'll get it. Beautiful.
Om Ganapati Namaha. Om Ganapati Namaha. Om Ganapati Namaha. Om Ganapati Namaha. Om Ganapati Om Ganapatiye Namaha. 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 Om Ganapatiye until the in-breath, one still holding the breath, and one still exhaling. Absorb the effects of the mantra like this intentional sensation. Now, do nothing less. Thank you to the God Prophet for clearing the way. Let's move it. I'll demonstrate the obligatory reader's invocation. To the divine silence of unreachable endlessness. To the divine silence of perfected knowledge. To the divine silence of the soundless voice. To the divine silence of the heart of the labyrinth. To the divine silence of the ancient mind. To the divine silence of the unborn guide. To the divine silence of the unseen guide, protector of all sentient life. To the divine silence of those of perfected knowledge. To the divine silence of human primate incarnation. To the divine silence of the labyrinth guides who sacrifice their liberation for those who have not yet awakened to the truth. To the divine silence of the Lord of Death, the eternal unborn resident of the labyrinth who has sacrificed his own redemption for the redemption of all voyagers everywhere. To the divine silence of the primordial being. To the divine silence of the great sacrifice, we offer homage, love, and hope. But above all, we give our gratitude. So today we're going to read something to address the reminder from somebody on the site, Kaylin FX, I believe, who pointed out that we should probably be getting into a different state before we do prayer for the American nations. So to address that, we're going to read this book. From this book, The American Book of the Dead by E.J Gold. Highly recommended. We're going to read a chapter called How to Use This Book. So this is excerpted from the Professional Labyrinth Reader's Handbook. It's for people who are reading, for people who are dying, some have terminal. And so it's instructions for connecting with people while reading sacred texts. We're going to try to apply that, some of the lessons from here to what we're doing. Enjoy.
We'll go page by page.
What's the name of that picture?
Snowden is Odin. That's the picture's name. How to use this book. Excerpt from the Professional Labyrinth Reader's Handbook. Just as a midwife assists Earth, the reader of the American Book of the Dead assists voyagers who have passed into the macro dimensions to attain liberation, or to achieve a conscious and deliberate rebirth on re-entry into the human dimension, in which the voyager may select a living creature with which to associate. Such symbiotic association is commonly called, from the organic view, a lifetime. The reader gives this guidance through the correct application of the instructions for passage through a period of severe stress, as is the condition during the voyage in the labyrinth between death and rebirth. Instructions are delivered to the voyager through readings, the lighting, atmospherics, augmented by incenses, and music, often supplying the mood, acting as a sort of emotional carrier wave, modulated by the thought patterns and imposed images suggested by the text. Readings can either be given in the presence of the human biological machine, or through an article formerly possessed by the voyager, or through a photograph of the voyager's biological machine.
If a photograph is used as a contact element, it should be transported to the reading chamber in a light-proof container. Cardboard wrapped with aluminum foil is recommended. The package containing the photograph should be opened by the reader only in the space in which the reading is to be performed. The basic idea of using an article, such as a photograph, and a familiar sound, such as a name, with which the voyager will automatically identify, and reading in the presence of the biological machine, is to establish a communication bonding that will tend not to break during the disorientation in the between-life state in the labyrinth. The optimum method of bonding reader and voyager is to establish a good communication and friendship before the voyager enters the labyrinth, primarily through frequent practice readings. However, where there was no previous contact, it is possible to establish a good bond by using the name, place, and time of entry into the between-life state, such as the hospital, home, or scene of accident, any location which would help the voyager fix the attention on the reading, age at time of terminus, physical death, and a good physical description of the individual. Then through visualization, the voyager mentally reading to that visualized form. The essential point is to establish contact, and the best contact is established on mental and emotional levels of visualization. While material objects may be used to make initial contact, the readings and instructions are actually directed toward the voyager in spiritual form, not toward the human biological machine or material objects. Once contact has been definitely established, the reader is able to deliver labyrinth guiding instructions with certainty. Sudden loss of contact, which can be tangibly felt by the reader, usually means that the individual has taken rebirth.
How can one be certain that contact has been established? Definite sensations and perceptions changes are associated with contact. To begin with, one understands every word of the instructions when one reads them.
Pardon me.
I can't go right now, I'll leave later, let me go first. To begin with, one understands every word of the instructions when one reads them. If words seem slurred or unintelligible to us, we're probably not in contact and the instruction is not being received. The reason one understands the instructions when contact is good is that the bond which has been established confers the clarity of understanding from the voyager to the reader. Some of the sensations indicating that good contact has been established are tingling at the back of the neck, a slight feeling of imbalance, as if the room is tilted, and a sensation of disorientation, as if one really didn't have all that vertigo. Hearing and visual perception greatly heightened. Sometimes there is an uncanny quiet during the readings, as if everything outside has suddenly come to a complete halt while labyrinth instructions are delivered. Some readers have reported that they get a funny feeling in the gut, or the top of my head felt as if it opened up and I could hear things for miles and see through walls. Each of these are simply indicators that tell us that we are in strong communication with the voyager. Our own perceptions, sensations, and feelings may be radically different from the examples given above, but one thing is certain. When we do differently establish contact with someone in the between lives state, we'll feel sensations and perceptual changes as a result. If we establish a contact with someone in the between lives state, our biological machine and being attention will tend to vibrate sympathetically. This phenomenon is called resonance. This is the same phenomenon that occurs when one strikes a C-tuned tuning fork and holds it next to another C-tuned tuning fork. The second tuning fork, even though unstruck, will begin to vibrate along with the first one. Sound can create sympathetic motion and thus can be used, like photon-driven solar sails, to move an individual through the labyrinth. As one learns from using the teachings and reading it out loud, sound has tremendous power. It can heal, liberate, awaken, and even amuse. When the voyager are vibrating in the sympathetic resonance, it seems as if we are reading to ourselves, but for the benefit of another, and so a strong sonic emotional vibration results. The reader can help to improve the chances that the individual in the labyrinth does not have anything drawing him or her back. By arranging the events surrounding Terminus, the voyagers exit from the human dimension, occasionally through intentional embarkation, perhaps an artificially induced out-of-body excursion of macro-dimensional expansion, more often through the process of biological death. The reader can help cut the bonds of attachment for the voyagers. The more the family is allowed to participate, the less likely they will be to fall into sadness or grief. Simply because the more they participate in the guiding process, the more they will understand death and dying as a means of freeing oneself for the ultimate adventure. Under ordinary conditions, the voyager will come to the force of unconsciousness from the moment of terminus and remain in a sleep state throughout the labyrinth voyage, unless he or she has specifically prepared during life through visualization, emotional reinforcement, in the realm of transcendent moods, and frequent reading practices, lying prone and being read to and reading to others. One's basic aim in this respect is to reach the voyager before terminus and drill the instructions until they are drenched in habit, literally second nature. Intentionally acquired macro-dimensional habits can greatly enable the voyager to remain awake through ordinarily overwhelming events in the labyrinth. And when rebirth becomes inevitable, the reader can help by indicating specific bodies, times, and spaces in which the voyager may choose to be reborn, a lifetime which the voyager may be able to accomplish all the next life's purpose in the voyager's evolutionary spiral. It can be said that the reader is responsible for selecting options or for a labyrinth voyager who has no decision-making mental equipment. Of course, this is not necessary for those who have made efforts to apply the teaching in life by working on themselves, developing a resistance to stress and a high degree of being attention. They would have learned how to make good decisions with the essential self, without the need for rational, linear brain reasoning. Such individuals no longer need a mind with which to think. This condition of essential self was called in the Zen the attainment of no mind, which means no mind but plenty of attention and interest without hunger and desire. The voyager need not wonder whether or not this data will be there when it is needed, because it will be, even for those who have practiced the teaching in life through constant intentional stress, visualization, and psycho-emotional reinforcement. Readings are performed as a backup, just in case something should go wrong. Go wrong. Go wrong. It should be a relief to know. It should be a relief to know that no matter what happens, there is a reader out there somewhere who has the sensitive and integrity to deliver the labyrinth instructions at the precise point at which they are not needed, or at which they are needed, and not a moment before, and that no matter how far from the human dimension we may wander, help is always available at extreme need, the operant words being need and extreme. As we learn more about the states between rebirth, we learn more about ourselves as immortal beings, and tend to regard death and dying not as an evil or fearsome, but just as another rather uncomfortable and often inconvenient part of the voyage, and in and through the space-time discontinuum. The labyrinth, too, loses its gargantuan properties, and the macro dimensions take on another or more real perspective, or rather, a complete lack of this perspective, as the reality holography, which is the universe, flattens and softens into a sphere of plastic perceptions. Rebirth no longer is a boogeyman, and the material universe is less of a nightmare, or no greater a nightmare than it has been all along. After the doctors and nurses have given up trying to keep the body alive, the voyager, trapped in the neural circuitry, and they have gone away, will be the only ones around with any idea of what to do next. The doctor works to prevent death, but a reader does not try to prevent dying and death. Why? That's the real opportunity for the voyager to get free of biological machine and the incessant chatter of its restless little mind, since the last time the voyager was in the between lives section of the labyrinth. The place of a reader during the period of macro-dimensional voyaging is a position of primary importance, prominence, and trust. It is occupied with dignity and integrity. Above all, a reader must care, really care, what happens to another voyager. At the same time, one cannot identify with another voyager. The reader walks a fine line between total empathy and total attachment, total non-attachment. It is especially important that the reader be able to read aloud, clearly and distinctly, in order to provide the instructions necessary for the labyrinth voyager to be able to receive it and use it. Here are the simple but essential skills we need to develop for reading. Read slowly and distinctly. Many readers sound at first as if they're trying to win a race. You'll find that if you slow down, even below the limit of slow speech tolerable for you, it will almost be too fast for a labyrinth instruction reading, unless you're a professional actor or actress, in which case just read normally. Emote as necessary and never let them see you sweat. 2. Jason will read 2.
You're singing already. I'm like being alone, reading to you. Two, read the instructions as if you had just thought of them. If you find a word that isn't your own, that is, you don't know what it means, get it defined before going any further. Don't, under any circumstances, substitute your own words for the words of the text by doing a reading. Just find out what the words in the text mean. Use a dictionary if necessary, but you must ad-lib. Do it on your own time. 3. Read each passage as if for the first time. Get the feeling of freshness about each idea as you read it. Feel the newness of each instruction as you encounter it. 4. Don't just read an instruction, deliver it. Reading instructions means that there's no one at the other end. Delivering instructions means that there's someone there who is receiving them. The surest way to deliver instructions is to know there is someone on the other end of the communication line. 5. Read every instruction as if it is important for it to get through. Okay. Think of the voyager as someone who will sink unless she gets through with these instructions. Get the idea of being a flight controller giving emergency flight instructions to a stewardess on a commercial jetliner on which the pilot and co-pilot are knocked out. Hey, what a great idea. 6. Read with purpose and certainty. The only way to do this really effectively is to feel it. The only way to really feel it is to know that the teaching is a working system. The only way to know that is to experience it. So make sure you get the experience of it. Now. Sorry, not moving again. Let me give that to you again. 6. Read with purpose and certainty. The only way to do this really effectively is to feel it. And the only way to really feel it is to know that the teaching is a working system. The only way to know that is to experience it. So make sure you get the experience of it. 7. Read what is actually there, not something you substitute. Anyone who feels and understands the urgency and importance of getting clear and precise instructions to a labyrinth voyager will be careful enough to read the actual text. If you drift off, you may substitute other words for the words that are really in the book. Make sure you give correct data, and the best way to do this is is by training your attention not to wander. When reading to the Voyager, don't hurry. Interlocking resonances ensures that you will be delivering the exact instruction at the exact moment that it is necessary. Interlocking resonance causes your instruction to coincide precisely with the exact stress point at which it applies. An instruction contains, as an integral part of its text, the address code encryption which directs its guiding force to that specific point of stress in the labyrinth to which it applies. In the macro dimensions, time is not a measure of events, but a function of space. A sequence of events occurs in its totality. The Voyager moves through this frozen sequence as an actor might move across a stage. All moments are equally accessible, all space within easy reach. It is possible to do all the readings through a labyrinth Voyager in one single day. Even so, the subjective time flow in the human dimension may appear to correspond to the voyage in periods of days, months, and sometimes years. Each reading in the text printed in bold-faced dark type is the exact address of each stress point in the labyrinth sequence. Delivering a precise reading for each instruction assures that the instruction will get to the point at which it is needed. Strike a bell before the bold-faced reading and again after the bold-faced reading, clearly parenthesizing the reading with sound for the Voyager. In the first stage readings, a bell strike is appropriate before and after each numbered reading. During the second and third stage readings, use the bell strike to begin and end the daily reading for that chamber. If you choose to read through the entire text for a Voyager, which certainly cannot hurt, maybe to the Voyager's benefit, you should use the bell strike before and after each bold-faced dark type reading to distinguish it as a stress point instruction, parenthesized by sound from the ordinary text. You can mistime the reading by an hour or more and still be sure that the reading will get to the point at which the being needs to apply it. But that's no reason to become careless, just because you know that there is a large tolerance in the timing of the readings.
Specific times for readings are recommended 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. because energy levels of the Earth are affected by temperature and atmospherics. And under these early morning and early evening conditions, ambient atmospheric plasma and other electromagnetic phenomena are at an optimum for macro-dimensional contact. If you read at haphazard times, you will not get the energy to perform your task nearly as well as if you make it a daily habit. And it's another good method of reinforcement to make reading a part of your daily life. You can do several readings for several Voyagers in a series by using the name and photograph to address each Voyager, following this with the appropriate text. Some renunciates do this all day long for as many as several hundred Voyagers. Get into the habit of doing the readings every morning, every evening, at exactly the same time, say 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 in the evening. Then, after a week of doing this, don't do it one evening. Notice a definite feeling of unused energy. That's why we do readings at the same time every day. You will find that by doing these exercises, you will begin to feel very good about reading aloud to anyone or even reading aloud to yourself. Think about it for a moment. When you are reading alone, reading a book, are you actually reading to no one? Of course not. Yet, many will say that reading alone is reading to no one. That's like the old joke. What does he do when he's alone? I don't know. I've never been with him when he's alone. Constant practice and good discipline at maintaining your exercises will develop into a clear understanding of what you are doing as a reader. Good discipline in maintaining your exercises on a high level of energy input is the only way to achieve this. Only by putting the teaching into action will you really learn what this is all about. As you might have noticed, just reading about doing has no learning effect. As you continue applying the teaching in action, you will inevitably become more and more aware of subtleties in the terminology and structure of the teaching. It will begin to make practical sense. As this occurs, you will be able to see more and more ways in which you can apply the teachings in your everyday life, to make you more able to handle your existence, to help others handle theirs, and ways to use these ideas in a whole body, mind, motion, spiritual healing technique, along with many other applications not covered in this present volume, which are now available in home study courses and videotape and work manuals. During the first few readings, you may notice that you tend to lapse occasionally into inattention. You might want to be there for the reading, but your attention wanders before you can do anything about it. It may even be a minute or two before you notice that you seem to have unaccountably drifted off, and that words are coming out of your mouth, but they've all become gabble and garbage, gibberish. Like hearing someone in a dream and you came out of it with a start, realizing that you aren't following the meaning of the text. This has probably happened to you if you drive a car. You suddenly realize that you haven't been paying attention to anything for several minutes. Some people can drive for several hours without being aware of what they've been doing. Everything just goes on automatic pilot. In delivering labyrinth instructions, your attention must be focused directly and firmly on every single word that goes across, paying particular heed to the danger signal that contact is momentarily broken.
For just a moment, can you do any type of accent or imitation? Can you give us that paragraph again with an accent?
This is all American accents. This has probably happened to you. If you drive a car, you suddenly realize that you have been paying attention you suddenly realize you have not been paying attention to anything for several minutes. Some people can drive for several hours without being really aware of whatever they've been doing. Everything just goes on automatic pilot. In the delivering labyrinth instructions, your attention must be focused directly and formally on every single word that goes across, paying particular heed to the visualization that you don't understand, paying particular heed to the danger signal that contact is momentarily broken, a word, phrase, or visualization that you don't understand. Eventually, you will develop the ability to be there with full attention for every word, every phrase, every single instruction. Now you, specific remedy. The specific remedy for wandering intention is to read as if someone's life depended on it. You can get the idea that the voyager is in danger unless you get the necessary instruction across. Sometimes a feeling of danger succeeds where the best mental intention fails. You can't maintain constant being attention because the emotions of the biological machine will pull that being attention into sleep. The trick is to arouse the emotions along with the being attention. There are some easy ways to accomplish this.
I hesitate to bring this up, only because it is another of those things which can't be handled in a book. It needs a coach and a supervised situation to give this kind You should know that it is available, but only in a workshop situation. Several remedies you could use without having to go through a special course to learn to arouse and maintain the emotional and physical attentions are available right now. 1. Read as if you're reading material for the first time. 2. Deliver the labyrinth instructions as if something terrible will happen if it doesn't get through. Read as if you're the individual you're reading to. Let me give that to you then. 3. Read as if the individual you're reading to will someday be reading for you while you are in the labyrinth, and you'll remember with joy or bitterness the job you did for them. Something else may suddenly occur to you as you're reading, so it might be well to mention it. You could well be projecting the scenario that you are not now in the between life state, that you are reading for someone else, a voyager in the macro dimensions, but you suddenly come to realize it really is you who is in the between life state. We are very capable of creating for ourselves a protective mechanism, a semblance of ordinary and familiar reality to disguise what's really happening. Now you have a good reason to read with attention, as if someone's very being depended on it. It might be your own. Sprinkle some water on the say, Om Guru Om, Om Guru Om, and sprinkle some water on the rock. The good energies created by these small efforts be for the healing and rebalancing of all who need it most, especially those who listen. Blessed be it.
Thank you. My phone died.
I wonder where it's at.